Unsurprisingly, there is a lot of criticism of Jordan B. Peterson. And a lot of it, not all obviously, but a lot of it is completely worthless and probably spite-driven. And as someone who spends a great deal of my time explaining Jordan Peterson's ideas because I believe they are genuinely transformational from both a psychological and political perspective, I wanted to show you some valid and serious criticisms of Peterson, starting with the fact that he is prone to, let's say, exaggeration.
Well, because there's nothing uglier than an old infant.
There is nothing that people like more and need more than to be listened to. And so it's a cheap way to gain reputation. And there isn't anything more important to people than reputation.
It's pretty clear that there are things that are more important than being listened to, like not starving, and there are things people care about more than their reputation, like the health of their children, and I'm sure there are plenty of things uglier than old infants. If I was not already positively predisposed to Peterson, I could very easily see how this kind of rhetorical style would be off-putting and would detract from the precision of his speech, because if nothing, everything he says is fatalistic, right? There's nothing more important than this, there's nothing worse than that. And another thing that can be off-putting from Peterson is the fact that he is a 60-year-old boomer who, for as smart as he is, does not seem to understand that his soapbox style of speaking makes it very easy for people to mock and satirize him and simply disregard his message by just turning him into a meme, which he makes it very easy to do.
Up yours, woke moralists. We'll see who cancels who.
Incoming transmission.
Concrete report moving out. Ready, cop.
Up yours, woke moralists. We'll see who cancels who.
Instruction complete.
Establishing video uplink.
Have some courage and some fortitude. Man the barricades and keep the degenerates away from the children.
You see what I mean? It's pretty funny, but it's quite clear that his style is being taken advantage of, and he can't seem to recognize that. And if you add to this fact that Jordan Peterson is the worst Twitter user to ever walk the face of the earth, you start to see a pattern. For the level of complexity and importance that the topics Peterson talks about have, you would think he would understand how much the inherently satirical and unserious nature of the internet robs him of the ability to articulate the complex points that he needs to make. The philosopher-comedian Bo Burnham articulates this issue quite nicely.
For me to do a sort of high-wire, fast-paced, crazy satire of the internet is talking about the internet on the internet's terms. If you are floating above the internet looking down on it, you actually have no first-person experience to talk about it. And if you actually experience it, you'll find that participating in the internet and being within it robs you of your ability to articulate something long form. It is very, very tough to talk about it.
Another criticism I have of Peterson is that I think he draws a too strong of a line when it comes to language. For example, Peterson takes a very strong stance against the term white privilege.
I think the idea of white privilege is absolutely reprehensible. The idea that you can target an ethnic group with a collective crime, regardless of the specific innocence or guilt of the constituent elements of that group, there is absolutely nothing that's more racist than that.
Now, I understand what Peterson is saying, and I agree with him in principle, but the term white privilege already exists in popular culture, and I think you just end up getting eye rolls if you take a very hardline stance against it the way Peterson does. I think in general, although not always, but in general, you're better off working within a linguistic framework that's already established than trying to get people to step out of it entirely, right? People who don't pay attention to politics know what the term white privilege means, or if they don't know what it means, they at least have some idea, and oftentimes I've found white privilege is just a shorthand way of acknowledging the statistical reality that on average white people tend to be in a better socioeconomic status than black people. And I think the advantage of having a term like white privilege out there is that you can use the term to illustrate genuine examples of disparities between black and white people, like the fact that white kids are far more likely to be born into intact two-parent households than black kids. And I think that is an important example of white privilege that should be talked about, the disparities in two-parent households. The other major issue I have with Peterson is that he has a strange hesitance that I don't fully understand about transgender adults being allowed to get whatever gender-affirming surgery they desire.
Let me ask you guys, would you ban transition surgery for adults?
I don't know.
Really?
Yeah, really. We're paying a big price for it. And I think that it was an act of stunning hubris to conduct the first trans surgery procedure. And it's not obvious to me at all that it's been a net social good.
I recognize his experience as a clinical psychologist, and I am not nearly as familiar with the medical literature as I'm sure he is, but I tend to trust the opinions of people like Ken Zucker or Abigail Schreier, who believe it is within the right of transgender adults and their doctors to make decisions about whatever surgeries they think is best for them. I think this hesitance on Peterson's part discredits everything else he says regarding the actual monstrosity of an issue, which is the surgical and medical interventions being done on people who are not adults regarding gender conversion and all that. But at the end of the day, here's the most important criticism of Peterson. He is, in many ways, just a mouthpiece for ideas that are far older and far more significant than he is.
Yeah, I knew when I was teaching at Harvard and at the University of Toronto that some of the things I was teaching were revolutionary. I was surprised that I got away with it, let's say, as long as I did. And so there's a way in which it doesn't surprise me. And I wouldn't say that's because of the brilliance of my ideas. It's because I'm good at communicating ideas, but the ideas that I've been developing, they're ancient ideas. They're the oldest ideas we have in some real sense. So they have a power.
I'm always going to be biased in favor of Peterson because of how much his work helped give me the concepts and language that I needed to turn my life around and deal with some serious psychological issues, and I will never be embarrassed or ashamed of that. But I am obligated to try and account for my bias as best as possible and offer criticisms of an imperfect person, if only to ensure that the ideas he is attempting to communicate take hold in as many people as possible. So I'd be curious to hear what other criticisms people have of Peterson, especially people who've followed this channel for a while and are also fans of Peterson. It'd be interesting to see if any align with observations I or others have had. But otherwise, good luck and Godspeed.